I'm going to talk about one case only, and perhaps the most important Supreme Court decision for litigators in 2016. And that's a case called Zurich Insurance and Hayward. Why it is so important is that the Supreme Court, in a unanimous judgment, gives guidance about how the court should react where dishonesty is uncovered after a claim is settled. The Hayward story is an interesting one. Long ago, in 1999, Mr. Hayward was injured in an accident, but sadly he wasn't straight about his accident, and the court ultimately concluded, as we will see, that he made the most of his claim and inflated it to a very large degree. The insurers, Zurich, who were responsible for dealing with the claim, had doubts about him pretty much from the word go. But what they didn't have was any evidence. They just had a suspicion that he wasn't quite right. Ultimately, they decided they had to bite the bullet and settle, because if he'd gone to trial and he was saying, I'm in a bad way, their concern is that he could get an awful lot of money. And so they wrote him a check for a six-figure sum and, settled the claim. 2 years later, Mr. Hayward's neighbours come forward and shop him to the insurers. So now, and for the first time, the insurers have hard evidence that the man had effectively taken advantage of them. So the insurers sue him in the tort of deceit. And can I make it clear, this case is about deceit in all civil matters. It happens to be an injury claim. It could be any type of claim. It could be a tortious claim for property damage. It could be contractual. But it was about the question of deceit, and was it open for the insurers to get most of their money back? It went to trial, and the trial judge found that indeed the claimant had made the most of his claim and ordered that there be a substantial repayment, about 90% of the damages be paid back. It then goes up to the Court of Appeal, which rather strangely and erroneously, as we will see, held that the claimant should keep all of the money. And in essence, what the Court of Appeal said was that the insurers had gone into this deal with its eyes open. It's not as if they had totally swallowed the story. On their own admission, the insurers had doubts about this character. So therefore, they'd made their bed, they had to lie upon it. On to the Supreme Court, reversal, 5-0. The trial judge had got it right, and the Court of Appeal had got it wrong. And the critical thing to come out of this case is that the Supreme Court draw this enormous divide between having mere suspicion on the one hand and hard evidence on the other. And at the time of settlement, the insurers only had suspicion, and you can't go to trial and argue a case saying, well, we feel uncomfortable or dubious about this character. Evidence is everything. And that evidence only came to light after the claim had settled. As to deceit, the other key point to come out of this case is that one can succeed in deceit even if one has not been wholly taken in by the deception. You don't have to show that you swallowed the story hook, line and sinker in order to recover in deceit. Rather, all you need do is demonstrate that the deceit had a material impact upon your decision. And it did. The Zurich story, remember, was that he was telling these lies, and they were concerned that if a trial judge believed those lies, then he could get out of them a far greater sum of money. So the deceit had a material impact upon the decision to settle, and it followed in turn, therefore, that they were able to recover. Indeed, the Supreme Court went so far as to say that it could not conceive of any circumstances where a party who harboured mere suspicion up to point of settlement will be precluded from later getting their money back if at a later date only it secured evidence rather than suspicion, hard evidence of dishonesty. So what we glean from that decision is that deceit will undo everything. Indeed, there is a wonderful phrase, fraud undoes everything, a phrase used long ago by Lord Denning and mentioned in the Supreme Court judgment. So with that in mind, I think the practical point is that one must always advise all clients at the outset that they must be utterly honest, because if there is any degree of dishonesty, fraud, exaggeration, they could lose out horrifically. In injury cases, they could lose the lot. But Zurich and Hayward is, I think, now the definitive authority on the interpretation and the application of the law in the tort of deceit.